from request to awakening, what the law of attraction taught me beyond attracting. The point where everything began to change. There was a time when life, even full of things, seemed strangely empty. It was as if I were living inside a beautiful photograph, but one without depth, without that air that fills the lungs and lights up the eyes. There was a space between what I was living and what I dreamed of living, and that space, no matter how much I tried to ignore it, silently called to me every day. It was a call not to conquer something new, but to discover what was missing inside me. It was in this search that I found the words of Bruce Lipton. He spoke of something not taught in school, but that seemed to have been with me forever: the epigenetics of beliefs, the idea that the internal environment, thoughts, emotions, perceptions, not only influences but shapes biology, creating the chemistry of opportunities or the chemistry of limitations. Suddenly, it became clear that what I called destiny might just be the chemical reflection of the stories I told myself every day. And then, almost like an echo from another place, I came across the teachings of Neville Goddard. He spoke of imagination not as a game, but as the very foundation of reality. Not the distant, dreamy imagination, but the one lived as if it were now. He would say, mentally clothe yourself in that which you desire, and live as if it were already real. Those words fell on me like rain on dry soil. I began to see my mind as a cinema projector. The beliefs and emotions were the film, and life, the screen. If the film was marked by fear, doubt, or lack, the projected image reflected that. But if I changed the film, if I fed the reel with new stories and coherent feelings, the screen would inevitably show a different movie. I realized that the universe does not respond to pleas, but to the coherence between what one feels, thinks, and lives. And then came the revelation that changed everything. The law of attraction is not about asking something of the universe like someone sending a letter and waiting for a reply. It is about becoming the type of person who naturally lives what they desire. It is not about conquering, but about embodying. It is not about waiting, but about being. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first seed of a transformation that began long before I saw its fruits. The deception of fast manifestation. In the beginning, I believed that speed was proof of power, that if I could manifest something in a few days, it meant I was mastering the law of attraction. It was as if the waiting time was an obstacle and not part of the process itself. But haste, I learned, carries a silent code that the body understands as scarcity. It's like telling the universe, I don't have it, I need it now. And this message is not lost in the air. It reverberates within every cell. When the body receives the signal of urgency, it doesn't interpret it as abundance. It interprets it as lack. And this feeling of lack creates a specific chemistry, hormones, impulses, reactions, that tunes the mind and heart to a frequency of absence. The brain, always literal, registers wanting as proof of not having, and, faithful to what it already knows, it repeats the same frequency like a scratched vinyl record that always plays the same part of the song. It is a cruel paradox. The more you try to accelerate, the more you reinforce the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Expectation turns into tension, and tension does not create, it only contracts. It's like planting a seed and every day digging up the earth to see if it has germinated. The soil loses its strength, the root breaks, and in the end, what could have blossomed with patience is lost to impatience. It took time to understand that it is not speed that measures the strength of manifestation, but the quality of the attunement, that the waiting time is not lost time, but the interval where the root grows in the invisible, preparing to support what is to come, and that forcing the pace is like trying to hasten the sunrise. It will come, but not before its time. The discovery of the body as a vibrational compass. It was only when I started paying attention to my body that I realized how much it was a silent map of my vibration. I had read and heard countless times that it is not the isolated thought that attracts, but the coherence between mind and heart. Yet, until then, I insisted on guiding myself only by what my head said, and the head lies, or at least it distorts. The body does not. The body accurately translates what we are really emitting. It speaks through sensations, contractions, expansions, warmth, cold, lightness, weight. It is as if each emotion has a chemical signature, and that chemistry is the message we send to the field around us. When I realized this, it became clear. I could mentally repeat beautiful words, but if my body was tight, tense, restless, the frequency I emitted was different, and it was that frequency the universe was reading. I began to observe more carefully what the dominant emotions were throughout my day. I discovered that often, even while dreaming of abundance, I spent hours immersed in sensations of scarcity. It was like wanting to walk north while my feet insisted on taking steps south. A simple change was enough to alter this dynamic. I adjusted small parts of my routine to create spaces where I could truly feel what I wanted to live, not just to imagine, but to allow the body to experience that sensation. And in a few weeks, external events began to reorganize in a curious way, as if responding to a new, invisible command. It was then that I understood. The body is the vibrational compass that indicates if we are in the right direction, and when it is in harmony with what we desire, life begins, little by little, to align, not because something magical happens out there, but because something profoundly coherent begins to happen in here. The illusion of performative spirituality. At some point along the way, I realized that I was turning my practice with the law of attraction into just another to-do list. There were schedules, repetitions, mantras, visualizations, and yet something felt empty. It was as if I had put spirituality inside a box of routines, but had forgotten to put life inside it. And the most subtle and dangerous part was that all of this gave me the feeling that I was doing my part, when in fact I was just running away from what I needed to feel. The signs were subtle but clear. I didn't practice to be present. I practiced to avoid discomfort. Each visualization was just another request disguised as certainty. Each affirmation was another reminder that I did not yet have. And when I looked around and saw other people telling their manifestation stories, I felt as if I were always late in a race that no one was really running. It was like trying to listen to a calm song on a radio with static. The sound was there, but distorted. The internal noise, made of comparisons, expectations, and demands, did not let the melody reveal itself. And the more I tried to turn up the volume of my practice, the louder the noise seemed to get. Over time, I understood that performative spirituality does not feed the soul, it just keeps it busy. It offers movement, but not transformation. And transformation does not happen in a rush or in comparison. It happens in the silence of a true encounter with what we feel. Because it is there, in that space where nothing needs to be shown or proven, that the frequency adjusts naturally. The turning point. When I stopped trying to attract, there was an instant, almost imperceptible, when something inside me simply gave up trying. It was not a surrender of dreams, nor an abandonment of desires. It was like releasing the reins of a horse that was exhausted from being pulled in the same direction. The tension dissolved, and with it, the need to convince the universe to give me what I wanted. In that space of quietude, I realized that the real change did not happen when I said, "I want to have," but when, internally, I began to live, "I am now." This change did not happen dramatically. It was born from small practices of anticipated living, in which I placed myself in the emotional state of one who was already living what they desired. It was not pretending, nor self-deception, but a conscious dive into feeling. My body, little by little, began to recognize this new state as familiar. And when something becomes familiar to the body, it begins to operate as if it were already real. It was then that I understood the role of active patience. It is not sitting and waiting for something to happen. It is remaining awake, present, ready to act when the opportunity arises, without trying to push time, without digging up the earth to hasten germination. It is trusting that there is a flow, and that resisting it only keeps us farther from the sea. The image that always comes to me is that of a river. It does not strive to find the ocean. It just flows, goes around rocks, crosses fields, follows its course, and inevitably, it reaches its destination. Perhaps living in tune with what we desire is exactly that, to stop pushing and start flowing, trusting that if the frequency is right, the encounter is inevitable. What really attracted change? In the end, I realized that the transformation I experienced did not come from repeating requests to the universe, but from changing the silent frequency that my body and my emotional field carried every day. It was like adjusting the foundation of an instrument. When the tuning is done at the root, the melody inevitably becomes more harmonious. Bruce Lipton helped me see how this change begins in biology, in the internal environment that shapes not only emotions but also the scenery in which we live. Greg Braden, with his understanding of the unified field, brought even greater clarity. Coherent emotions are like energetic signatures. They register in the invisible fabric of reality, the message of who we really are, more than who we say we are. And this signature is read by the universe, not as a request, but as an already existing state. This understanding reinforced for me the vibrational responsibility we carry. We are not just emitting signals outward, we are also constantly receiving and responding to what we create. We are transmitters and receivers, gardeners, and also the fruits of our own cultivation. Today, when I think of manifestation, I no longer think of asking for something distant. I think of cultivating the inner garden. Life, like this garden, responds to the climate we create within ourselves. The seeds flourish not because we plead, but because we nourish them with a fertile, coherent, and stable internal state. And perhaps deep down, this is the greatest discovery of all. It is not about waiting for something to happen, but about becoming the type of person for whom that thing is already natural. Because when the frequency aligns, life has no choice but to reflect that truth.